Is there a worry of recession? Some Republicans would argue we're already in one.
I think a lot of the talk of recession is political, depending on who's in power. They're going to say one thing or the other. Let's never forget that housing doesn't open up foreign markets, doesn't make us more productive. It doesn't lead to cancer cures or software innovations. The notion that housing drives an economy gets it backwards. Housing is consumption. Housing is the result of a growing economy. So I think a lot of the focus of the areas of weakness in the economy are overdone. And I would just add, I think this notion of an inflationary problem right now is the stuff of redefining what inflation is. And so
you're right. Sorry to interrupt, but I want to drive this conversation forward because I grew up in the 1970s and 80s where inflation was real. I mean, if you look at the numbers now, it's not as terrible. Employment seems to have held up very well. And you seem to think that even though everyone's freaking out, there could be a sort of what's termed a soft landing, right? That actually the stimulus withdrawn because of the emergence from the COVID pandemic could actually result in a sort of more normal economy than we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, well, it's got to be stressed that this would be the first inflation in the history of mankind in which the dollar strengthened against the yen, pound, euro, and gold. To me, what's happening here is that we had lockdowns. Think back to Adam Smith. One person working alone could maybe make 1 pin per day. 4 people working together could make tens of thousands. You can't shut down a global economy. And the miracle of pricing that prevailed back in February of 2020, and then put all those people out of work, have them go to different jobs and everything, and expect those prices to still be there 2 years later. Of course, prices are higher, but my stress is command and control isn't inflation. Inflation is a devaluation of the unit. We just haven't seen it.
I think what we are seeing right now is very unique in history. Normally, after such an extended period of time of a very powerful pandemic and almost into the third year, it's going to be 3 years, I guess. Usually, there should be a very powerful rebound, in the sense of in China we describe it as like revengeful consumption. There's a substantial pent-up demand for a lot of things. And this was also, historically verified by, for example, the 1918, 1919 Spanish flu experience. But I think what's very unique in the United States is that, because of two things, I think. One is that this rounds of sort of government help and subsidies, in terms of sending out checks to American households. And that greatly stimulated the supply of money in the economy. That's one thing that's sort of driving the inflation. The second thing is definitely related to commodity prices that are driven by the war in Ukraine. The oil and gas and food prices. These are very fundamental commodities in the economy, and they're driving up a lot of other costs of other products in the downstream industries.